He survived gunfire in Iraq. He survived a brain tumor. But nothing in Shane Burke's 35 years of life had prepared him for the 3 seconds between spotting a grizzly cub and hearing the thunderous galloping of its mother charging straight at him. What happened next, on the 8th day of his honeymoon in Teton National Park, would test every ounce of combat training, medical knowledge, and raw willpower he had ever built. And the one thing that saved his life was something he never planned for. Time and place anchor. It was Sunday, May 19th, 2024, and the rugged alpine slopes of Signal Mountain in Teton National Park, Wyoming, were deep in the chaos of spring. At roughly 7,700 feet of elevation, the mountain's dense lodgepole pine forests and tangled aspen groves had erupted in fresh green growth, drawing elk, moose, and the animals that hunted them out of the high country. The wind that afternoon was howling, the kind that swallows human voices whole and scatters scent in every direction, turning the forest into a sensory void. The greater Yellowstone ecosystem is home to between 700 and 1,000 grizzly bears. Signal Mountain sits squarely in one of their most heavily trafficked spring corridors. Sows with cubs descend to these lower elevations in May to feed on new vegetation and scavenge winter-killed carcasses. The area had produced encounters before. It is, by every measurable standard, one of the most dangerous places in the lower 48 states to hike alone. Character portrait. Shane Patrick Burke was 35 years old, a resident of South Hadley, Massachusetts, and a man whose entire adult life had been defined by surviving things that should have killed him. He had served 17 years in the United States Army Reserve, including a deployment to Iraq where he endured gunfire, mortar bombardments, and improvised explosive devices on a near-daily basis. That experience had given him stress inoculation, the ability to think clearly when every nerve in the body is screaming to panic. But the military was only the beginning. In 2021, Burke underwent emergency surgery for an eye injury that nearly cost him his vision. A year later, doctors discovered an acoustic neuroma, a tumor growing on the nerve connecting his inner ear to his brain. He survived neurosurgery. It was the brain tumor that changed everything. Burke decided he was done waiting. He married his girlfriend Chloe, a 31-year-old paramedic and EMT with Wilderness First Responder certification, and they planned their adventure honeymoon, a 3-week van trip across the American West. They brought their dog Cadence, bear spray, and everything they thought they would need. By May 19th, they were on day 8 of the trip. Shane had one specific goal that afternoon: photograph a great gray owl, the largest owl species in North America, known to nest in the old-growth timber around Signal Mountain. He had studied bear safety protocols extensively. He knew grizzlies could sprint at 35 to 40 miles per hour. He knew a surprise encounter with a sow and cubs was the single most dangerous scenario. He had practiced unholstering his bear spray until the motion was muscle memory. He believed he was ready. The safety warning and escalation. Teton National Park maintains rigorous bear safety protocols. Every trailhead carries warnings about grizzly activity. Rangers recommend hiking in groups of 3 or more, making continuous noise, and carrying bear spray in a readily accessible holster. On that specific morning, there were no emergency closures on Signal Mountain, but the area was broadly classified as a high-density grizzly zone. The Burkes initially followed every rule. They walked together on Signal Mountain Summit Road with Cadence between them, but park regulations prohibit dogs from being off-road on trails. When Shane spotted the forested area where the great gray owls had been reported, he made a decision. He would go alone. He would only be a half-mile from the parking lot. He would make noise. He would be careful. That single decision, the transition from a group of 2 with a dog on a paved road to a solo hiker in dense timber, moved Shane Burke from the lowest risk category in bear country to the highest. Grizzly Bear Encyclopedia. Condensed. The grizzly bear, Ursus arctos horribilis, is the apex predator of interior North America. An adult female in the greater Yellowstone ecosystem typically weighs between 250 and 450 pounds, though males can exceed 600. They can reach 8 feet tall when standing upright. Their claws measure 2 to 4 inches and are fully capable of tearing through muscle, tendon, and bone. Their bite force exceeds 1,200 pounds per square inch. A grizzly can accelerate from a standstill to 35 miles per hour in less than 2 seconds, covering ground faster than any human can react. At close range, there is no escape. In a defensive attack triggered when a bear is surprised or perceives a threat to its cubs, the animal's goal is neutralization, not predation. The bear attacks until the threat stops moving and stops appearing dangerous. This is the biological foundation of the play-dead strategy. By going limp, face down, with hands interlocked behind the neck and legs spread wide, the victim removes the stimulus driving the aggression. In those minutes, the victim must override the most powerful instinct in the human nervous system. Every one of those instincts will get you killed. The encounter. Burke had been in the timber for roughly 30 minutes, moving slowly, scanning the canopy for owls. He was singing and shouting at intervals to announce his presence, but the wind was obliterating everything. His voice carried no farther than the nearest tree. His scent was being scattered in every direction. He had decided to turn back. He was walking toward the parking lot, roughly a half mile from his car, when something moved in the brush to his right. A blur, small, brown, a grizzly cub. Burke froze. He reached for his bear spray, popped the safety clip, and raised the canister. He had perhaps 3 seconds. He did not get to use them. The attack sequence. The sound came from his left. Thunderous galloping, heavy and fast, the sound of 400 pounds of bone and muscle covering 20 yards in under 2 seconds. The sow was already at full charge. She hit him like a freight car. Her initial bite clamped down on his shoulder, and the force of the impact drove him face first into the dirt. Burke locked up. 17 years of army training overrode every survival instinct, screaming at him to fight, to run, to scream. He went flat, face in the dirt, hands interlocked behind his neck, legs spread wide, the play-dead position, exactly as he had studied it. He did not make a sound. The bear did not stop. She bit into both of his legs, her 1,200 psi jaws puncturing deep into the quadriceps and hamstrings. She raked her claws across his back, opening long lacerations. She bit into his thighs again, shaking him the way a terrier shakes a rat. Then she went for his head. Burke felt the bear's mouth close around the back of his skull, shielding his cervical vertebrae and carotid arteries. The bear redirected. She bit down on his left wrist, then his right hand. Her jaws closed around both hands and the object they were holding, a pressurized canister of counter-assault bear spray. Burke heard a sharp, concussive pop, followed by a warm, wet sensation spreading across his head and back. He believed in that moment that the bear had crushed his head. He was wrong. The bear had bitten directly into the bear spray canister. The pressurized capsaicin, concentrated at 2 million Scoville units, had detonated inside the animal's mouth, coating her tongue, throat, nasal passages, and eyes in a chemical fire. The sow released Burke's hands instantly. She reared back, choking, blinded, her respiratory system in full revolt. She turned and fled into the timber with her cub. Burke did not move. He lay in the dirt for several minutes, his blood pooling beneath him, listening for the sound of the bear returning. When he was finally certain the bear was gone, he rolled onto his side, pushed himself to his knees, and then, with the slow determination of a man who had already survived things that should have ended him, he stood. The rescue. His hands were destroyed. Deep puncture wounds ran across both wrists where the bear had bitten the canister. His shoulder was severely broken. Both legs were torn open from mid-thigh to knee. He was hemorrhaging from at least 6 major wound sites. Burke scrambled up a hill, searching for cell service. He found one bar. He sent his wife a single text message. One word: attacked. Chloe Burke read that message and, in the span of a single breath, made the transition that would save her husband's life. She stopped being a terrified wife and became a paramedic. She called him. She heard his voice, ragged and fading, describe a grizzly attack. She told him to remove straps from his backpack and camera and improvise tourniquets on both legs. She kept him conscious and focused while he called 911. Despite catastrophic pain and significant blood loss, Burke was able to relay his precise GPS coordinates and a clear description of his injuries. A search and rescue helicopter was dispatched. He was airlifted from the mountainside to a waiting ambulance and driven to St. John's Medical Center in Jackson, Wyoming. Somewhere between the helicopter and the hospital, Shane Burke recorded a video on his phone. His face was gray with blood loss. His hands were wrapped in blood-soaked fabric torn from his own clothing. His voice was calm. He looked into the camera and said, "If you are seeing this, I might be dead. I love you." He was not dead. Surgeons at St. John's stabilized his shoulder, inserting hardware to reconstruct the shattered joint. They cleaned and sutured the bite wounds across both legs, both wrists, and his back. The risk of infection from bacteria in a grizzly's mouth was severe, and he was placed on aggressive antibiotic protocols. Remarkably, none of the injuries had penetrated his thoracic or abdominal cavities. The first thing Shane Burke said to the park rangers who interviewed him was not a complaint. It was not a demand. It was a request. Please do not kill the bear. She was just defending her cub. The National Park Service investigation confirmed what Burke already knew. The attack was a textbook surprise encounter involving a sow and a yearling grizzly. The bear had no prior history of conflict with humans. The NPS did not euthanize or relocate the animal. Signal Mountain was temporarily closed to public access to allow the bears to move away without further stress. Burke's story went viral. ABC News, Inside Edition, CNN, and dozens of regional outlets covered the incident. He and Chloe used the platform to advocate for bear safety and conservation. He credited his survival to three things: reading and understanding what to do in a bear attack, having bear spray in his hand when it mattered, and 17 years of military training that taught him how to be still when everything inside him was screaming to move. When asked to compare the bear attack to his deployment in Iraq, Shane Patrick Burke did not hesitate. "That was the most violent thing I have ever experienced." The DNA twist. But the story was not over. In January of 2025, 8 months after the attack, the National Park Service released the results of a DNA analysis conducted on biological samples from the attack site. The findings overturned everything Burke and the investigators had initially believed. The bear that mauled Shane Burke was not a mother defending her cub. The attacker was Grizzly 794, an adult male bear. The cub Burke had spotted in the brush belonged to Grizzly 610, a famous sow well known to researchers. Grizzly 794 and Grizzly 610 were likely in the process of mating when Burke stumbled into their territory. The male had not attacked to protect a cub. He had attacked to protect his mate. The play-dead strategy had still worked. The male bear's motivation was still defensive. The bear spray canister had still detonated. The outcome was the same. But the narrative shifted in a way that stunned even the wildlife biologists who reviewed the case. Burke had not been mauled by a 400-pound mother. He had been mauled by an adult male grizzly in the grip of mating season aggression, an animal that could easily have exceeded 500 pounds. A male grizzly defending a mate is among the most dangerous animals on the North American continent. His survival was even more remarkable than anyone had known.